This episode is brought to you by Grasshopper. Stay connected and run your business from your mobile phone with Grasshopper. To save $50 on your order, visit trygrasshopper.com/TWiP. Today on TWiP Apps, Affinity Photo is an impressively robust, capable, and extremely quick app that just may be enough to fill that Photoshop-shaped hole in your photo editing life. Affinity Photo, from the UK-based company Serif, is one of an eventual three-part series of apps designed to fill your photo editing, design, and page layout needs. Based on modern tech, clever engineering, and perhaps a bit of magic fairy dust, Affinity Photo is incredibly fast and impressively deep. For those tired of the subscription model of certain other software companies, this photo editing app may do everything you need at a fraction of the cost. Its brethren apps, Affinity Design for vector-based illustration, and a forthcoming layout app, as well as an iPad version with feature parity on the horizon, you may find that you are, in fact, ready to take your photo editing to Affinity and beyond. I'm Photo Joseph, and this is TWiP Apps. Welcome to another episode of TWiP Apps. I'm your host, Photo Joseph, and today my guest is Ashley Hewson, the Managing Director of Serif, to talk to us about his newest app, Affinity Photo. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joseph. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So tell us a little bit about the company Serif itself. First off, where are you guys based?
So we're actually based in the UK, in Nottingham, Robin Hood country. We've actually been around for a very long time, actually, since 1987. So for a software company, quite a long-standing company for sort of 29, nearly 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Nearly 30 years now, yeah.
Oh, very good. In Nottingham, there is a pub. I've been there once. And there's a pub that I think is the oldest in the world, right? Isn't the oldest pub in the world?
That's correct. Yeah, I can't even remember the name of it, but you're correct. We do have the oldest pub in the world. It's in one of the cliff faces just under the castle.
Yep, that's it. And I was introduced there to a proper ale that's not carbonated, pulled from the hand-pulled ale.
Yeah.
Which is becoming a thing now. It's actually a couple of our local restaurants and bars here have that now. It's very unusual to see.
Okay. I mean, actually, I'm not really a traditional Brit in that regard. I kind of prefer your Budweisers and your Coors, to be honest with you.
Oh, we'll hold that against you. Right. So if you guys have been around for so long, nearly 30 years, what were you doing before the Affinity apps?
Well, we've always been involved in graphic design software. So right from the get-go, in fact, the very first product we did was called Page Plus. It was a desktop publishing product.
Okay.
And then we moved on and we did a vector drawing program and a photo editing app. So we've always done graphic design sort of software. But I guess the main thing is that historically all of our apps were kind of more focused towards the home user kind of market for really people who are more, I guess, hobbyists and wanted to kind of create, say, birthday cards and and sort of flyers for their local golf club, stuff like that. So we never really pushed or sort of targeted, I guess, more of the high end range. The other thing is that all of the apps that that we did historically before Affinity anyway were all Windows based software.
Okay, and so Affinity now is Mac only, or is it Mac and Windows?
So right now, at this very moment in time, it's still just Mac only in terms of what's available to buy. That said, we do have one of the apps, Affinity Design, is currently on beta. A Windows version, I should say, is actually on beta. And in fact, we're planning on launching both the Affinity apps that we've got out at the moment on Windows before the end of the year. So it will be on Windows and Mac by the end of the year. Yeah.
Very good. And is there any crossover into iOS?
There will be, yes. So we are, in fact, working on an iOS version at the moment of Affinity Photo, which is the app I'm going to be showing. But that will actually be out, hopefully, sometime relatively early next year. We're kind of targeting an Easter launch, hopefully, for an iOS version. But that will be specific, actually, to iPad. We're not planning on doing any phone versions at the moment, yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, fairly complex app. It's kind of hard to do on a tiny little screen.
Yeah, for the type of stuff which we do. I mean, to sort of finish the story. It's kind of 7 years ago now where we decided to work on a higher, more professional range of apps, and that's kind of how Affinity was born. We kind of started entirely from scratch. With a whole new sort of back-end engine, and really wanted to make a suite of applications focused on desktop publishing, photo editing and graphic design, a suite of 3 applications that were going to be sort of super fast, intercompatible in terms of the fact they share the same file format, and also cross-platform. So as I say, we are on Mac at the moment, but we are going to be launching on Windows and as I've mentioned on iPad too.
So to some degree, is it going after almost the Creative Cloud market?
Yeah,
minus all the video side of things.
Yeah, certainly in terms of our audience, it is the kind of the creative professional that we're targeting, and I guess obviously most of those users at the moment are on Creative Cloud. So that's certainly an area that we're targeting, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that there's Affinity Design. So Affinity Photo we'll look at today, but Affinity Design is another piece of that. So that's an illustration app, like an Illustrator type of a thing?
Correct. Yeah, it's Affinity Designer, and it's a vector, mostly a vector-based drawing and design application. It also does have some pixel tools as well. The use cases for it is very much kind of illustration, but also very much sort of towards sort of UI design, UI mock-ups, web mock-ups, and all kinds of graphic design type work, really.
Got it. Well, maybe we'll have to have you on the show another time to talk about that app specifically. It sounds like that could be a good,
that'd be great.
Good tie-in.
Sure.
Good tie-in. Very good. Okay, so before we get into the demo, last question for you. Price. What is the price of Affinity Photo?
So Affinity Photo, the same with all of the Affinity apps, are going to be these $49.99, and it's I guess the other thing that we've really kind of pushed in terms of to sort of make our apps more sort of better value, I guess, is that we don't rent the software either. So it's a one-off purchase, and for that we actually deliver free updates and what have you. So it's a one-off purchase.
Great. I know a lot of people appreciate that. It's the Creative Cloud model, the subscription model now is frustrating for a lot of users. So through the website, through our site, the PhotoApps.expert, we hear from a lot of people that they really are looking for alternatives where they don't have to pay a monthly fee. They would just rather pay up front. So I know that's going to be welcomed by many. Excellent. Well, we're going to get into the app demo in just a moment. But before we do, let's just have a quick break to hear a word from our sponsor. Hey, TWiP listeners. As you've probably heard by now, I'm running a workshop in Oaxaca, Mexico in January. And there's a few seats left, and I'd love if some of you could come along. Head over to photojoseph.com/workshops, where you can learn everything you need to know about it and hopefully sign up. With any luck, I'll see some of you in Mexico in January. This episode is brought to you by Grasshopper. Grasshopper is a virtual phone system designed for entrepreneurs. Grasshopper works just like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware purchase or software installation. With their iOS and Android app, callers can reach you wherever you are on your mobile phone. Grasshopper allows you to keep your existing number so you can maintain your brand. Or when you make a call, your client can see your Grasshopper caller ID instead of your personal phone number. Simply select a toll-free or local number, record a custom greeting, and add multiple extensions for your business. Toll-free numbers are great for marketing and make your business sound more professional. You can set up department and employee extensions with custom call forwarding to any phone in the world. You can get voicemails emailed to you as audio attachments. And you can also send and receive text messages from your business number. Join the over 250,000 Grasshopper customers today. Plans start at just $12 a month, and you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Turn your smartphone into a business line with Grasshopper. To save $50 on your order, go to trygrasshopper.com/TWiP. That's trygrasshopper.com/TWiP. And we thank Grasshopper for their support. All right, we're back. Let's take a look at Affinity Photo. We're here with Ashley Hewson, with the Managing Director of Serif, and he is all set and ready to show us his beautiful app, Affinity Photo. Let's get this thing going. Here we are.
All right, cool. So here it is, Affinity Photo. It's kind of laid out, I guess, as you would expect from a professional photo editing application. We have all of our tools down the left-hand side, as you can see here. I'll just sort of run my mouse pointer over them. And on the right-hand side, we have various panels for things like controlling your color, swatches, brushes, layers, of course, which are very important. We'll be looking at that a lot, effects, styles. So we have all these kind of panels down the right-hand side. So it's kind of laid out, I guess, as you would expect. And I think the thing I want to kind of do today is just sort of create a bit of a composition with Affinity Photo to try to run through as many of the features, I think, as I can kind of manage. Because I think that's kind of one of the main use cases that we see people using Affinity Photo for, is to kind of create compositions and sort of very kind of sort of detailed layered images with. So let me start with that. I'll just sort of start with some basic things. So here we've kind of got an image of a castle actually in Germany on a hill. And let's say I wanted to apply some adjustments to this. So in the right hand side here, we've got our layers panel, as I mentioned earlier. And of course we can apply adjustments by using adjustment layers. So let's just do a couple of things here. If I start by choosing, say, a curves adjustment, I can sort of make some adjustments to the curve of this. The one thing I think I will be pointing out quite a few times as I'm using Affinity is just how fast it is. All the time here when I'm making this curve adjustment, everything's happening in real time. And this is kind of one of the advantages that I think that we've had by being able to start from scratch to build this stuff from the ground up. So
what size file are we working with here? What's the resolution of this picture so people know what we're seeing?
Okay, well, you can see that in the top left-hand side here. This is a 15 megapixel picture that we're working with. As you can sort of, that's being shown at the top there, 4,752 by 3168. So it's a fairly big image. Incidentally, Affinity Photo will never run out of memory. Even we've literally had, I think, a 1 tera, 1,000 megapixel image, or a 1 gigapixel image. That's what I need to be saying. So we've tested that out. It's actually one of the images that the Hubble telescope took and sort of stitched together. So we managed to get it in here. And even with an image that large, the way that we do memory management is pretty advanced. So you actually never run out of memory at all. So yeah, so if we just go back and have a look at, say, applying these curves, as you can see, as I'm sort of moving this around, you get instant view. There's a curves adjustment. I'll just show another one, an HSL adjustment, for example. And as you can see, again, it's all happening in real time as I'm kind of moving the sliders around. Now, of course, adjustment layers are pretty cool because they're non-destructive. So with an adjustment layer like this, I can turn it off. I can turn it back on again. I can go in there and readjust the levels that I've applied. If I want to, I can even mask an adjustment layer as well. So let's say in this example, I've made this grass down here quite red, but actually I didn't want to do that. I wanted to leave it green. I could just pick up an eraser and I can erase away. I'll just do this quickly, but yeah, you can erase away from an adjustment layer. So there's certain parts of the image that you don't basically apply that adjustment to. I'm not doing a very good job of this, but you kind of get the idea. Yeah. And then even after I've sort of masked that part of the adjustment layer, I can very easily just go back in and change the adjustment. And as you can see, it's not affecting the image, the area that I've kind of erased away from the adjustment. So we have adjustment layers, which is a very standard thing, of course, in photo editing software, and very important that we have that type of thing available. But let's kind of take this now a little bit further, perhaps, and sort of start building in some other sort of pixel layers on top of this. So I'll start with, say, this sort of image of some lava. And I can just sort of copy this and go back to my original image and paste it on. So that's now kind of brought on this other pixel layer of some lava, which I can move around, of course. Now, actually, what I want to do now is apply a blend mode to this to actually kind of make it look like that mountain where the castle's on here has actually got some lava running down it. So if I just kind of roughly move it to where I want, in the layers tab, as you'd expect, so I've got a drop down here to change the blend mode. And again, this really shows how fast Affinity Photo is, because I could literally just hover over these blend modes.
Oh, nice.
With my mouse, and it just instantly gives me that and this is really useful for blend modes, of course, because normally it's quite a bit of trial and error involved. You have to apply it and then undo and all of that. So with this, as you can see, it's just literally absolutely lightning fast. It just goes all the way down it. So I can choose the one that I want. In this case, it might be, say, a lighten blend mode. I can then sort of position it where I want. Obviously, again, I could say pick up an eraser here and just erase away certain parts of that part of that layer where I don't want that lava effect to be on it. So we can start building up quite complicated compositions here. So if I just bring another thing on here, I've got an image of a crow, and I'll just copy that and do a similar thing. I'll paste this on. So again, I can sort of move this around and sort of position it as I want. But as well as those kind of blend modes and adjustment layers that we can do, we've also got a full range of filter effects too. So if I go to the top here, I might want to make it look like this bird is kind of moving through the air. So I can do a motion blur on this. And the cool thing with things like motion blurs as well, I'm just literally dragging on the screen here. And again, you can see it's instant in terms of how fast it is to apply that motion blur. And of course, what it means is you're actually seeing that as a preview on your page as you're working. So it's you're not getting some preview in some other window. You're not getting some small representation of it. You're actually doing it live on screen. So it gives you that instant feedback all the time.
Let me ask you, before you move on, when you drop the pictures on there, both the lava and the crow now, are these on there as essentially as smart objects that we'd call it in Photoshop, where no matter how you scale it up or down, it is not going to raster that? So if I scale it way down to a tiny little thing and then hit OK, or leave it there, go on to something else, come back later, scale it back up.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that because we don't have smart objects in the way that I guess you'd be used to them, because we don't really need to. Let me just show you something here actually.
Sure.
I'm going to use her later on, but if I just drop her, one second, let me just apply that motion blur before I move on. Right, so if I drop this image of this gladiator woman on here, as you can see, I'm resizing this. This is just a pixel layer. I'm resizing it, I'm rotating it, I'm doing whatever I want with it. And I'm not being, if I come off it, I can go and do something else. It's not asking me to sort of confirm those changes.
Right.
Let me take this to a really drastic level. I'll make this really, really small. So now it looks all kind of pixelated. And you might think, well, ordinarily you may well have to kind of commit those types of changes, and then if you were to kind of make it big again, if I was to kind of go back here and make it big again, with other software you'll end up with a kind of the pixelated result, because you've kind of lost all of those pixels by making it small. Here, as you can see, I've made it small, I've made it big again, and it's still a high-res version of it. Now you might say, well, that is just very similar to a smart object, but I think it's actually a little bit better than that. Let me just show you something else. If I make this small again, okay, so now it's really pixelated. So let's also do something like get a clone brush on this. And I'll just choose an area of her face here and then clone it. You can see that's kind of cloning what looks like a low-res version of that, okay?
Sure.
But now if I zoomed out and made this big again, you can see even what I was cloning, even though I was doing that clone when I was looking at a very low-res version of it, it's actually still been cloning that high-res data. So we never, wherever possible, we try not to throw away any pixels whatsoever. You've always got the high-res data there available to you should you need it. It's not always possible, but we always try to make sure that it is.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I know in Photoshop, if you wanted to do essentially what you just did, clone, do any retouching or any manipulation to the original image, you would have to have it as and you wanted to be able to rescale it later, you have to have it as a smart object. So you create that, that's a step. And then to edit it, you have to open that smart object in a separate file. It opens up as a separate window. And it's completely separated from everything else you've done. So if you had done a color adjustment or curves adjustment as an adjustment layer, you wouldn't now be seeing that while you're editing the photo, while you're doing the retouching or cloning or whatever. So here you've taken all that away. Everything is basically in real time on the image as we go. Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because if I had like a black and white adjustment layer over the top of all of this, and then when I was editing that, with Affinity Photo, I can see that still showing it as a black and white image, whereas as you say, if it was a smart object, I'd go away and edit it somewhere else and it would be color again as I'm adjusting it, which isn't necessarily what you always want, is it? Sure. Excellent. Well, that's huge. Very nice.
Okay, cool. So, in fact, let me just go back to this gladiator image and do something else with this. In fact, what I wanted to show with this is some pixel selection tools. So, in fact, actually, the first thing I'll do is just flip this. I'll just flip that horizontally. So now actually what I want to do is an accurate pixel selection on this. So I've got a pixel selection brush, and I can sort of brush over roughly the area that I want to select. As you'd expect with a brush like this, it's just kind of snapping the sort of the marching ants around the outside. But of course, with images like this, there's quite often issues around sort of strands of hair and what have you. If I just zoom in there, clearly this selection at the moment will not be selecting those individual strands of hair. So one of the things we did work on very hard with is selection refinement. So at the top here, I can click refine. And then with my refinement brush, I can just brush over the area that it needs to have another look at, if you like. So all of this area of the hair, and you can see just in this overlay view that it's starting to do a better job of that. In fact, I could even go on the inside here where there's this kind of hole in the middle, kind of do that. Now, even with an overlay view, you can kind of see it's doing a better job. In fact, I can actually preview this as a black and white mask. And now you can see actually how it's doing a very, very good job of selecting those individual strands of hair. So this is going to make it very good when I do an extraction. So I've got various options that I can do now. I can output this as a selection, as a mask, as a new layer. I'll just stick this out as a new layer just to show it. And there's the extracted gladiator. And of course I can now copy this and paste it onto my composition. So I want to make a sort of in the corner here somewhere. So we've got really good pixel selection as well. I'll just show you something else to do with manipulating layers. I'll just grab this lava again and go back to my main composition and drop this pixel layer of lava on. Now, of course, as you would expect, you can reorder layers. So I could put this layer of the lava behind the gladiator if I want, and of course I can move it around. That's kind of as you would expect. The other thing, of course, we can do is use pixel layers to mask other layers as well. And we've done that really, I think, in a very easy way with Affinity Photo. You can just drag your layers within other layers if you wanted to make one layer kind of a clipping mask of another one. So in this case, if I was to drop that inside the layer of the gladiator, now that lava layer is only drawing inside of the layer of the gladiator. So it just makes it quite easy to kind of mask certain things or use layers as clipping layers. Of course, now I could go back in and I could erase away from some of that. There's some, I could use maybe more of a textured brush. I've got a huge library of brushes you can choose from. So I'll just choose a bit of a texture brush here to kind of make it look like, you know, she's kind of a little bit charred, I guess, for want of a better way of putting it. So we have that ability as well to kind of manipulate layers very easily, not just with adjustment layers and blend modes and filter effects and all that type of stuff. We can do clipping masks and mask layers, and it's all very easily done just by sort of dragging and dropping layers in different positions.
That's great. Very cool. Nice implementation.
Cool. So there's just kind of a quick example of a composition. I'll just sort of move on to show a few other things with Affinity Photo 2. If I kind of move on to this image of a car, I showed you before applying that motion blur to the bird. Another way we can actually do filter effects is by using live filter layers. Now, this is kind of a cool thing because I showed you earlier adjustment layers, and obviously adjustment layers you can kind of apply it applies in your layer stack, and adjustment layers are great because they're non-destructive. You can turn them on and off, readjust, all that type of stuff. That's cool with adjustment layers, but most applications do that. One thing that we are now doing is we've actually got all of our filters as live filter layers. So I'll just show you what I mean by that. If I was to, on this car, do a similar thing and bring on, say, a motion blur, and again, I can drag this motion blur, and again, it's lightning fast, as you can see. But the thing that's now cool about this, as you can see on the right hand side of my layers tab, is that this is now a live filter layer. Exactly the same as an adjustment layer, but it's a filter effect. So I can turn it off and on. I can go back in at any time and sort of adjust the amount of blur that's on this. I can even mask the blur. So I can get my eraser brush. I'll just go back to a normal brush here. Oh, the other thing to say is, as you can see, I'm getting a live I've got an eraser brush at the moment, and I'm getting a live nozzle preview of what it's about to do. So you can see. I noticed
that. I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, so as I'm moving it, and this is the same with any brush or anything that you use, you always get this live preview, so you see what you're about to do before you even do it. So I can erase away from this blur if I wanted to. I could, if I just undo that, I could apply a gradient on this blur. And this is effectively a mask that I'm creating. So if I just make that go from, say, white to black, I could now make this look like it's more blurry at the back of the car than at the front. So all of those things that you'll be used to in terms of dealing with adjustment layers, you can now do with all our whole library of filter effects too, which is a really kind of cool thing. So that's live filter layers. Let's move on. I'll show you another thing that we kind of worked quite hard on was a Inpainting Brush to kind of quickly remove unwanted objects from things. This would normally be used to remove kind of minor issues that you might have in an image, like a garbage bin that's kind of somewhere, or a bird that's flying in front of something. I'll just show you a more extreme example of how our Inpainting Brush will work with this image. Here I've got a picture of some elephants, and I've just picked up my Inpainting Brush. So let's say I wanted to remove this little baby elephant here from the image altogether. I can basically just paint over it with the Inpainting Brush. And now it's just removed that entirely. Obviously I've still got a reflection here, but I can do the same thing with the reflection, sort of paint over all the area of the reflection that I want to get rid of. And it's removed the reflection too. Now, of course, Affinity Photo doesn't know what was actually behind that elephant, but as you can sort of see, especially if I sort of zoom in, it's effectively cloning. You can see it's kind of automatically cloned sort of one area of the image over another one, but it's done it in a very intelligent way, and it's kind of given a pretty decent result for a very kind of quick first pass. So we've got really good inpainting.
Very cool.
Let's move on. I'll show you some perspective correction. So here I've got an image of a castle with obviously with a reflection in the water, and I've got various distortions I can do to this. I'll show you perspective correction. So at the moment this is a single plane. I'll change this to a dual plane. And what you can do with perspective is, if I just sort of line this grid up roughly to the perspective that it's currently at, I'll just turn the grid off actually to make this easier to show. Once I've actually kind of lined that grid up, I can now correct the perspective of this just by kind of dragging it around. And you can see it's even applying that to the reflection of it. Wow. Too. So that's a pretty cool thing, and something that achieves a very good result. And again, it's all just happening live on your screen all the time. And you know, I've kind of said this now a few times, but, yeah, but that's that again is this kind of this new technology. Yeah, so it's kind of cool. What else? Oh, one other filter, just the last filter I show you is this lighting filter, because it's one I probably like the most. With this image, if I wanted to apply a lighting filter on this, I can do that. And again, with a lighting filter, you can sort of just drag it around and apply the lighting in precisely the position that you want it to be. In fact, with lighting, I can add more than one light. I can change the color of the light too. So we've got a really cool lighting filter too, and again, it was all happening live on screen as you're working on it. So that's lighting. One of the things actually that I didn't mention at the start was that Affinity one of the things that we have tried to do with Affinity, all Affinity apps actually, particularly relevant for Affinity Photo, is organise the UI in the best way possible. So everything that I've been doing so far has been working on with all your standard tools, with your selection tools, blemish removal tools. You saw clone earlier, your erasing, brushes, those types of things. But there's obviously other things we can do with Affinity. We can do things like liquify, so make things look like they're melting or sort of moving around. We've got full HDR merge, we've got full raw editing.
So that raw editing, where's the raw decoding coming from? Is that from the OS, or are you doing your own raw decode?
So there's two things. So we're actually using a DC RAW, if you wanted to use effectively the built-in one that comes with natively with Affinity, or you have the option also to switch it to Apple's own RAW from OS X. Okay, great. And we also have another persona. And in fact, if we go back to have a look at the app here, these are actually on the top left-hand side of the screen. You can see, to start with, I'm in this photo persona, but we've got these other modes, Liquify, Develop. So Develop's actually for raw processing, tone mapping, and that's for HDR merge. And they also have another persona, is what we call them, for export. So I'll just show you an example of one of these. If I go to this example here of a clock on a step. Actually, what I want to do with this is achieve kind of like a Salvador Dali type effect of a melting clock going down these steps.
Okay, cool.
So a couple of things that I want to do first, actually, before I start melting it, is I want to correct the perspective to start with. So again, I can choose, this is a single plane correction this time. So I'll just kind of correct that to make it look like it's lying down at the right angle on that step. Actually, while I'm here, another thing I might want to do is on the right-hand side here, I've also got layer effects. So I might want to apply a shadow to this. And another thing that we've got with shadows is I've kind of got this offset tool, so I can actually just drag a shadow into the kind of the position that I want. So I think I'm happy with that. So now I actually want to kind of now melt this. So I'm going to use Liquify for this. So at the top here, I can just switch to Liquify. And you can see when I've done that, when I do that, instantly the app now switches to have a whole different set of tools down the left-hand side. And these tools are dedicated for Liquify. And the panels on the right are all, again, panels that are relevant to when you're working on Liquify. So it's effectively changed the whole workspace, to focus on the tools that you need for Liquify. So it's just a way for us to keep the UI organized, so it doesn't become really bloated.
Sure.
You know, so if we kind of move on now, and now I actually sort of use Liquify on this, I'll just zoom out a little bit. I can just drag this this Liquify brush on here. And incidentally, some of the other tools that I've kind of got here is I could, for example, freeze an area of this. So I could actually say, well, actually, I don't want all of that to kind of bend when I'm moving it around. And now you can see, even if I'm trying to brush on this top bit, that stays this, in the same position, but these other parts of it do still kind of move around. And you can see, in fact, if I sort of zoom in, and actually if I just take the mesh off, even as I'm sort of pushing this, even that shadow that I applied earlier is still actually moving with it as I kind of push the clock around. So that's kind of another thing, is that we have Liquify, but it's also the fact that we have these other personas, I guess, you know, to kind of keep the UI organized, which is a pretty unique thing that we decided to add.
Yeah, I like it. It's effective when you have that many tools that are dedicated, or that many controls dedicated to a single effect or tool or persona in this case. Yeah, it makes sense putting all those tools in a separate window effectively. Not a separate window, but a separate mode almost. I like it.
Yeah, and actually, just what you said there is an important point, because other apps for certain things, let's say, for example, raw processing, when you go into that, it actually does come up as a separate window. You're all of a sudden, you end up with a separate dialogue to actually do that raw. And that's the same for other things in other apps as well. The cool thing with this is that you're always looking at the same sort of document space. When you flick to Liquify or you flick to Develop, each of these things, yeah, so if you flick to these different personas, you're not popping up different windows. It's just still on screen all the time. So
now, once you commit to that, so you left the Liquify and it asked you to commit. Can you now go back into that and re-edit it, or has that been rendered out as pixels?
That has now been, well, yes, so that has been rendered out as pixels at that point. It is still a undo step, so I can still undo that, that Liquify there, if you sort of see that. But I couldn't actually at this point go back and edit that mesh. I'd have to, once I've kind of committed that, I would have to sort of do that again.
Okay. That
actually does remind me just one other thing that I should have shown you before actually. If we kind of go back and look at this this composition that I was working on, you can probably see down the right hand side here I've got a history panel, and this has got all of the steps of history that I've kind of gone through to create this. There's a couple of things with history. The first one is that it's super fast to kind of scrub back through it. So if I was to drag this, I can literally go, and you can see these are all the steps that we've gone through. I'm not cheating here. You saw me do all of these things, right? And it's just instant to kind of go right back to the beginning, right back to the end.
That's a cool UI to do that. I like that a lot, the slider.
Cool.
Haven't seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other really cool thing with this, and one of the best things about it, is that you can actually, when you come to save your history, you can actually save it with your document. So what this means is, if I was to come back to this in 6 months' time, I could load it right up and I could start Command Zing, and it will start undoing things that I'd actually done 6 months ago. And the other cool thing with that is that that's going to be totally cross-platform as well. So when we've got the Windows version, if you open the Windows version of the file, it will have all the history that you saved with the Mac version. And even when you load it on iPad, I know we haven't got the iPad version yet, but that's all going to be carried through. So in particular, I guess when you're switching between, say, iPad and Mac, it will just feel like this seamless experience, because even all your history is going to be there with it. So that's another kind of cool thing.
So is your intention for the iOS version to be a complete clone, if you will, a replica of what we're seeing on macOS?
Yeah, it's a challenging, but that is absolutely our intention. So we already have it built. It has all of the features. So the main thing that we're focusing on is to have all of the features of the Mac version. We're not going to compromise. It's not going to be some cut down, noddy version, if you like. It's going to have every single feature of the Mac version. And of course, it will have totally native file format compatibility. There won't be anything that you create on your Mac version. You'll just be able to load on the iOS version. It is a challenging project because there is a huge amount of tools that we need to expose in a touch optimized interface, of course. Sure. And in fact, the way that we're going to achieve that is in effect splitting it up into even more personas, if that makes sense. So when at the moment we've kind of got these 4 personas on here for editing and Liquify, etc. On the iOS version, we'll just have more of those to mean that we can try and organize all of those tools.
Okay, makes sense. It's great. Yeah. I look forward to seeing that.
Cool. Maybe just one last thing I'll show you. I mean, in fact, what I'm working on right now, or the app that I'm using right now, is actually the beta version of Affinity Photo 1.5, which actually isn't even launched yet. It will be coming out at the end of the month. It'll be coming out in about 4 weeks' time.
So 4 weeks from now. This is early October, so...
so it's going to be, I think it's literally the 11th of November, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Is what we're aiming for. So about a month's time, yeah.
Excellent.
And one of the new features that we've just added, and this is going to be available in 1.5, is 360 photo editing. So here I've actually got a 360 image. And this is kind of the standard image that you end up with a 360 camera. It's kind of in this equirectangular distortion. What we now have is... in our layer menu, we can actually do a live projection. I think this is locked, sorry. We can do a live projection in an equirectangular projection. And if I do that, I can now zoom around and sort of pan around this in real time to sort of look at all the different angles of this. And it's kind of corrected the perspective of that for us. But But the best thing about this probably is not just being able to see it and view it and choose what angle you want to look at it at. You can then use all of the tools of Affinity Photo to edit this 360 image. So let's say this is a good example. I've kind of got this this cable here in this image, and let's say I wanted to remove that. That tool I used earlier, in fact, to delete that elephant, this is maybe a more realistic use for it. I can just sort of paint over that wire. And that's kind of magically removed that wire from the image. And now if I go back to my layer and, 1 second, I need to select the layer again, sorry. So if I go back and go back to edit that live projection again, no matter what angle I'm at now, even though I edited it in a kind of a normal view, I can actually now see that cable's been removed from this image. So we've got 360 image editing. In fact, the other new features that we're
really
going to...
cool.
Sorry?
That is really cool.
Cool. Yeah, we really like that one. In fact, I mentioned HDR merge. I won't show you that now, but HDR merge and tone mapping, that's a new feature that's going into Affinity Photo 1.5 as well. And we're also now adding macros and batch processing, which is something that obviously lots of people have been asking for. And so that's also now going to be coming to Affinity Photo 1.5 too.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, there's a lot of features here, and I think it's obviously worth pointing out that to our viewers that we are not looking at everything here. This is clearly a very robust app with a lot of features in there, and we only have a limited amount of time here.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of wanted to show some of the. I guess hopefully to kind of get across the kind of the speed of it, the real-time nature of the edits that you do, and that of course requires doing some quite drastic things to images. Of course, I guess in the real world, potentially you will just be doing much more sort of just very fine adjustments and refined things. But I guess kind of doing these compositions and that type of thing was a good way of showing some of the speed. But of course, it is a very robust application for sure.
Let me just ask you, text tools. I see there is text tool in here. Is this a pretty full-featured text? If you're used to doing text layout in Photoshop on composites, is that something you can pretty easily do here as well?
Okay, so let's go back to this. So we've got two types of text, as you can see down the left-hand side. I can do artistic text, and just sort of type text in. Perhaps more of a better thing to show maybe would be, say, frame text. So I can drag a text frame out. Let me just insert some filler text in that. I'll just make it white to mean you can see it. Actually, filler text is quite cool because you can just sort of drag it around and it automatically fills up what area you've got if you're just sort of testing a different layout. Let me just delete that. But actually, the other thing here, as you can see, at the top we've got sort of these character and paragraph buttons, and these actually bring up some very quite advanced typography options. So here, for example, I can say adjust even the tracking of this text or the leading of it. So almost quite advanced things that you'd normally only find in a desktop publisher. We've actually got available to us here. So it's got full support for OpenType and different glyphs and all of that type of stuff as well. Yeah.
Super. That's very good. It really does give you. For a lot of users who are using Photoshop for layout, even the way that I do a lot of the composite stuff for my website, it's a few pictures and some graphics and some text, and that's currently done in Photoshop. It looks like all that could be easily done in here.
Yeah, it's funny people use a photo editing tool to design flyers. Sort of like what I guess you'd normally use a sort of desktop publishing product for, but that's what people do, isn't it? So
well, sure. If you're designing for the web or title cards for video projects, something like that, then you need those pixel-based tools, and it's all here.
Sure. Yeah. Very good. And the other kind of cool, just another thing, just to kind of mention it again, I guess, is that obviously we're looking at Affinity Photo here. We've mentioned about Affinity Designer. Next year we're going to have Affinity Publisher, so that's going to be our desktop publishing sort of page layout app. But the other important thing to say is that all of these apps all share exactly the same file format. So I could, if I save this as an Affinity Photo file, as it is now, I will then next year, when we've got Publisher out, I'll be able to open it in Publisher. All of the layers, all the effects, all the adjustments, everything will be there. All the text with all the settings that I've applied on its tracking and leading, all of those things will all then be available to me to edit. So even if I started doing a mock-up in photo and then decide, oh, actually, I need to do something a bit more complicated with this, and so I need a sort of a publishing app, then I can just bring it in and just carry on without sort of exporting as PDF or whatever else.
Very flexible. Nice. Love it. All right.
Cool.
Are there any other high-level features you want to hit on or tell us about before we move on?
I think I've kind of exhausted the files that I've got available to me to demo.
No, that's great.
So, yeah. Okay, cool.
We've seen a lot. It's impressive for sure. It is very robust, and just again how fast it is. That's phenomenal. I never once saw a render bar or a spinning pinwheel of death or any of that. It's it's great. It's just been very, very, very fast to see. You know, obviously we're working with you said 15 megapixel. It's a relatively small photography file as far as modern digital cameras go. But if you said you were able to open up a gigapixel file and move around in there, now are you seeing the same kind of performance when you're working with that huge file? Yeah, in effect, because the way that it works fundamentally is that obviously if you've got a gigapixel image, when you're actually applying some edits to that, actually all you need to know is, how can I sort of describe this? The only thing that really matters for you as a user who's using it at that instance when you're making that adjustment is what pixels your display is capable of displaying to you. So if you're zoomed into a small area of it and you apply an adjustment layer, all we're actually doing is displaying we have to deal with making sure you're seeing that part of it in real time. Even though when you come to export it, the whole thing will be done. We don't need to worry about that. So that's one of the critical things in terms of our memory management. And the other thing that we do, you see, is it's only that part of it when you're sort of zoomed in that you actually need to store in memory. All of the rest of it we kind of dump out to disk. Well, that's not quite true. We kind of keep some of the bits around it that's just out of view, if you like. So when you pan, it sort of pans instantly. But yeah, we dump stuff out to disk. We only keep stuff in memory that we need, and that means it keeps running fast. And like I say, it never ever runs out of memory. Right. You might run out of hard disk space if you've got a really massive image, but it will never run out of memory. Okay, super, very nice. Well, thank you. Thank you for that tour. It's a beautiful app. I'm glad we were able to have you on because I've been hearing a lot about it. I've seen the splash screens on the App Store and just never got into it. And I know some of the viewers, some of the readers on PhotoApps.expert have been asking about it as well. So this is going to make a lot of people happy to be able to see this. Well done.
Cool. No worries.
Nice product. Kudos to the team. Looks like some very good engineering going into this.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that brings us to the next portion of our show, the guest app pick, where, as our viewers know, our guest is asked to pick his or her favorite photo editing app on any platform, Mac, Windows, iOS, or Android. And of course, it just cannot be from their own company. So, Ashley, what is your pick?
Well, my pick, I think, in terms of one that I actually do use regularly, perhaps even daily, maybe isn't quite always a class as a photo editing app, but it's more of a painting app, and that's Procreate for iPad. I think it's a fantastic app, but I particularly, I think that it's one that we kind of hold up as one that's got a particularly good brush engine, particularly nice looking UI, is particularly nice to use now with Apple Pencil, of course, on an iPad Pro. And so, yeah, it's definitely an app that we use a lot internally and one that we enjoy a lot. Very cool. This is not one that I have. I had to pull this up on the App Store, and I see I don't have this one, but I remember when it came out, it's listed as one of the essentials, only $6, can't argue with that. And yeah, the painting, right. Okay, now this is coming back to me, having seen it before. I've seen some beautiful work coming out of this. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's loads of artists that are using it, producing great work. And of course, people are doing a certain level of, you can't do some of the sort of effects and adjustments and things that you can do obviously with Affinity Photo, but in terms of starting with an image and doing some painting on it and stuff like that, people are using it for that. So yeah, it's a great app. And also I know the team, they're from Tasmania, and we've hooked up a couple of times, and they're a great bunch of guys. Very good. Cool. Well, there you go. Everybody watching the show, do check that out. Procreate looks like a lot of fun, and obviously the price is certainly right. So love that.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of the guest portion of our show. Andrew, where can people learn more about your company, more about the app, and of course, find the app to download and buy?
Yeah, well, the main place is on our website. It's affinity.serif.com. And in fact, there you can get a free trial of the app, 10-day free trial. And you can also, if you're a Windows user, you can download the Windows beta of the apps now too. So that's available to you. In terms of actually purchasing it, the Mac version is only available on the Mac App Store, so you can go to the App Store to do that. Alternatively, you can find us. We generally use the handle Mac Affinity, and that's both on Twitter and Facebook, and we're very active on there. And of course, we'll answer any questions anyone has and that type of thing there.
Super. Is there a particular hashtag, or would it just be Mac Affinity for anyone posting photos edited in the
app?
Yeah,
it's just, Mac Affinity is generally our handle. We tend to encourage people to use a hashtag Affinity Designer or hashtag Affinity Photo, especially if you're kind of sharing any work and stuff like that you've kind of created, so we know which app you're using, basically.
Fair enough. Excellent. Well, love it. Thank you again for coming on and showing this to us, and great pick of the week, or great pick for you, and the social media people know where to find you. So appreciate all that. We're going to go ahead and let you go now, and we'll see you later. And again, like I said, hopefully we can have you on again when you've got Designer out. It sounds like another app that even photographers would still be interested in using, just when you get into that more advanced layout or design type of work that you want to incorporate with your photography. Why not? Sounds like a tool for everybody.
I think so, but we'd love to come back and show you that. And of course, I'd love to show you the iPad version of Affinity Photo when we have that too.
Yeah, that'll be exciting to see. I'm looking forward to seeing that for sure. All right. Cool. Take care, Ashley. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.
There you have it, folks. So that is Affinity Photo by Serif. Thank you, Ashley, for coming on and showing this to us. That's robust, man. That is a deep and big and powerful and very fast app. I think ultimately that's one of the most impressive things about it, is the sheer speed of it. The fact that you're not seeing any of those spinning wheels. And I work in Photoshop almost every day, and it's totally normal to wait for that progress bar to come to pass up, wait for something to happen. Seeing everything happen here so quickly is definitely impressive. And you can't beat the price at $49.99, just under $50 for this app on the Mac. It's a nice piece of app for sure. Very, very glad to see that. I don't really have any criticism at this point. And the app is, obviously we're only seeing a small piece of it. So there's nothing that I saw here that I wished worked differently. Even their handling of RAW files using 2 different RAW engines is very good. That's something that we've only seen once before here on the show. And it is a great way to handle that, because as we know, any manufacturer can't possibly keep up with every camera that is introduced to the market. So by allowing other companies to handle that and allowing the user to switch between them if one's handling it better than the other or one's not handling it at all, to have that option is definitely a very good thing. So I think at that point, we'll just have to leave it into the hands of you guys to grab it, tear it apart, and see what you think. And of course, let us know. There's a comment field on the TWiP app's website. You can comment on this particular show if you have any feedback or any thoughts about the app. We would love to hear about it there. And of course, the folks from Affinity will be able to follow that as well, and hopefully answer any questions that you might post on there. So that does bring us to the end of another episode of TWiP Apps. I am your host, PhotoJoseph, and you can find me on the socials at PhotoJoseph, as well as on my website, photoapps.expert. Special thanks to our sponsor, as always, for their support of this episode. And be sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and to visit our website at thisweekinphoto.com, where you can sign up for our email list to be notified of new episodes and to get exclusive subscriber bonuses. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you're watching on our website, you can subscribe to the show using the subscribe box on this page. If you have feedback, suggestions, or comments about the show, you can reach me, PhotoJoseph, directly by using our contact form. Just click on the Contact Us menu item at the top of our webpage. And finally, if you're a developer and would like to be a guest on the TWiP Apps show, click that same Contact Us button at thisweekinphoto.com and let us know what you've got. And with that, it's time to put that lens cap back on and go edit some photos.